Bright days don't prevent disappearances. People vanish in plain sight, on beaches, on open water, in places meant for rest and escape. What remains are abandoned belongings, unanswered questions, and families frozen in time. Decades later, despite endless searches and digital footprints, the truth still refuses to surface. Let's uncover 5 unsolved disappearances even the internet still can't explain. Story 1. On a cold December afternoon in 1946, a quiet stretch of Vermont wilderness became the setting for one of America's most enduring disappearances. The long trail, winding through dense forest near Bennington, appeared calm and familiar to hikers. That day, a young college student stepped onto the trail under fading daylight, seen by multiple witnesses as she walked steadily north. She never returned. Nearly 8 decades later, despite books, forums, documentaries, and endless online theories, the internet still cannot explain what happened next. Paula Jean Welden was born on October 19, 1928, in Stamford, Connecticut. She was the eldest of 4 daughters in a well-established family. Her father, William Archibald Welden, was an industrial engineer and designer known for creating everyday household items. Paula was described as intelligent, artistic, and independent, with a quiet confidence and appreciation for nature. In 1946, Paula was a sophomore at Bennington College in Vermont, living in Dewey House dormitory. She studied art and enjoyed painting, music, and long walks outdoors. She had previously explored short portions of the long trail during coursework and recreation. Friends remembered her as thoughtful and reserved, experiencing ordinary academic stress but showing no signs of planning to leave school. On December 1st, 1946, Paula completed her shift at the campus dining hall and returned to her dorm room. After speaking with her roommate, she changed into casual walking clothes, blue jeans, sneakers, and a red jacket. Her clothing was suitable for a brief afternoon walk, but not for dropping temperatures after sunset. She packed no bag, took little or no money, and left behind an uncashed check from her parents. Shortly after 2:30 p.m., Paula left campus. Around 2:45 p.m., a motorist picked her up while hitchhiking and drove her toward Route 9 near the Long Trail. Several people later reported seeing her walking along the trail and nearby roads. At approximately 4 p.m., she spoke briefly with a man on the trail, asking how far it extended. He told her it continued to Canada. Paula thanked him and continued walking. By 5 p.m., darkness fell, followed by snowfall. Paula never returned to campus. Her roommate assumed she was studying elsewhere, but when Paula failed to come back overnight and missed classes the next morning, college officials contacted her family and police. An extensive search followed. Hundreds of volunteers, students, National Guard troops, firefighters, and law enforcement officers combed the long trail, surrounding woods and nearby roads. No physical trace of Paula was ever found. No clothing, belongings, or remains. At the time, Vermont had no state police force. The investigation was led by local sheriffs and state investigators and was later criticized as disorganized. Investigators initially believed Paula may have become lost and died of exposure. Other possibilities included that she left voluntarily, suffered amnesia, or encountered foul play. A local lumberjack was questioned after giving conflicting statements, but no evidence connected him to a crime. Despite decades of renewed interest, digitized archives, online sleuthing, and global attention, no confirmed sightings, forensic evidence, or answers have ever surfaced. Even today, the internet cannot explain Paula Welden's fate. Her disappearance devastated her family, particularly her parents, who never received closure. Paula's father criticized the investigation investigation and pressed for reform. Within a year, Vermont established the Vermont State Police, making Paula's case a catalyst for institutional change. Even as her own story remained unresolved, the mystery continues to haunt investigators and historians. What if Paula's disappearance was the result of a simple moment that left no trace behind? What if the truth exists somewhere beyond records, witnesses, and even the internet itself? Story 2. In the chaos of a foreign revolution, an aging American writer walked willingly toward danger and then disappeared without a trace. His final words hinted at uncertainty, even acceptance. No grave was ever confirmed, no remains identified, and no official explanation agreed upon. More than a century later, despite archives, scholars, and endless online speculation, the internet still cannot determine what truly happened to Ambrose Bierce. Ambrose Gwinnett Bierce was born on June 24, 1842, in Meigs County, Ohio, the 10th of 13 children in a poor but book-loving family. He left home at a young age to work as a printer's apprentice and later enlisted as a Union soldier during the American Civil War. Bierce experienced brutal combat and suffered a severe head injury at the Battle of Kennesaw Mountain, an injury that affected his health and temperament for the rest of his life. After the war, Bierce became one of the most influential journalists and satirists in America. His writing was sharp, cynical, and unafraid to confront hypocrisy. Works like An Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge and The Devil's Dictionary secured his place in American literature. Privately, Bierce endured deep personal loss. Both of his sons died young, his marriage ended in divorce, and his health steadily declined. In his later years, Bierce wrote frequently about aging, disillusionment, and death. In October 1913, at the age of 71, Bierce left Washington, D.C., announcing plans to revisit Civil War battlefields before traveling south. By December, he crossed into Mexico through El Paso during the height of the Mexican Revolution. Despite his age and poor health, Bierce reportedly attached himself to Pancho Villa's forces as an observer and witnessed the Battle of Tierra Blanca. He traveled onward to the city of Chihuahua, where he continued corresponding with friends. On December 26, 1913, Bierce sent what became his final confirmed letter, writing that he was leaving the next day for an unknown destination. No verified sighting or communication followed. Following his disappearance, U.S. consular officials attempted to trace Bierce's movements, questioning members of Villa's army and reviewing scattered reports, but accounts were inconsistent and inconclusive. Some believed Bierce was executed as a suspected spy amid the violence and paranoia of the revolution, while others suggested he died of illness, exposure, or misadventure in remote desert terrain. Oral traditions in parts of northern Mexico claim an elderly American writer was shot by a firing squad, though no physical evidence has ever confirmed this. Other interpretations point to Bierce's own writings, in which he expressed acceptance, even preference, for death, leading some to believe he may have intentionally disappeared or ended his life. Despite decades of research, no remains, grave, or definitive documentation have ever been discovered. With most of his immediate family already gone, Bierce's disappearance left behind questions rather than organized searches. Friends, readers, and scholars became the keepers of his mystery. Over time, the lack of resolution transformed his vanishing into part of his literary identity. His life ended as ambiguously as many of his stories, leaving future generations to search for answers that never fully materialized. What if Ambrose Bierce's disappearance was not the result of violence or chance, but a deliberate final act? What if the truth of his fate lies somewhere beyond history, records, and even the reach of the internet? Story 3. On a summer evening in a quiet Colorado mountain town, a man closed his shop, announced a short hike, and walked into rugged wilderness just hours before nightfall. He never returned, despite one of the largest search efforts in the region's history, and decades of scrutiny. No physical trace has ever been found. Even now, with online archives, documentaries, and global discussion forums, the internet still cannot provide an explanation for what happened to Keith Reinhard. Keith R. Reinhard was born on September 10, 1938, and was 50 years old at the time of his disappearance. He was a longtime sports writer for the Daily Herald in Illinois, known for his dedication to high school athletics and his thoughtful writing style. Married with 2 children, Reinhard was described by family as creative, curious, and restless, someone who often searched for deeper meaning beyond routine life. In the summer of 1988, Reinhard took a 3-month leave of absence from his newspaper job and traveled alone to Silver Plume, Colorado. He hoped to write a novel, reconnect with nature, and consider whether a quieter mountain life suited him. While there, he lived modestly in a small apartment behind an abandoned church and opened a tiny antique and photo shop. Although the business earned little money, Reinhard remained optimistic and stayed in regular contact with his family, looking forward to an upcoming visit from his wife later that month. On August 7, 1988, Reinhard closed his shop at approximately 4:30 p.m. He told friends he planned to hike to the summit of nearby Pendleton Mountain and return the same evening. The hike was known to be strenuous, with no established trail, loose rock, dense vegetation, and steep terrain. Reinhard carried no hiking gear, no extra clothing, and possibly only a single can of soda. Friends were concerned, noting he was not in peak physical condition, was afraid of heights, and had attended a party the night before. He was last seen wearing casual clothes and gym shoes. When Reinhard failed to return by nightfall, concern grew. By the next day, a search was launched. Over the following week, more than 100 searchers, helicopters, and trained dogs combed Pendleton Mountain and surrounding areas, logging over 10,000 man-hours without finding a single clue. During the search, a pilot assisting the effort died when his small plane crashed in the rugged terrain. Authorities found no clothing, equipment, remains, or signs of a fall. Investigators reviewed Reinhard's writings, developed film from his cameras, and examined his novel drafts for insight, but nothing explained his disappearance. Speculation grew, partly because Reinhard had become fascinated with the prior disappearance of Tom Young, a bookseller who once occupied the same storefront and whose death was later officially classified as self-inflicted. Some wondered whether Reinhard's research led him into danger, while others believed he may have become lost, suffered a medical emergency, or intentionally vanished. Despite rumors ranging from foul play to voluntary disappearance, law enforcement found no evidence to support any conclusion, and decades of digital sleuthing have uncovered nothing new. Reinhard's family never believed he left willingly. They emphasized that he was hopeful, engaged with his writing, and making plans for the future. Over the years, they cooperated with investigators, provided DNA for national databases, and supported renewed interest in the case. Still, no matches, remains, or answers have surfaced. Silver Plume remembers Reinhard as another quiet mystery woven into its mountains, while his loved ones remain suspended in uncertainty. What if Keith Reinhard's disappearance was caused by a single moment that left no physical trace behind? What if the answer exists somewhere beyond memory, mountains, and even the reach of the internet? Story 4. On a calm February morning in 1979, 5 experienced fishermen left a quiet Hawaiian harbor for what was meant to be a routine day on the water. By nightfall, a sudden and violent storm erased all trace of them. For years, the ocean offered no answers. Then, nearly a decade later, a discovery on a remote, uninhabited island over 2,000 miles away reopened the mystery, one that even today, despite modern technology and global online investigation, the internet still cannot fully explain. The men aboard the 17-foot Boston whaler Sarah Joe were Benjamin Kalama, 38, Ralph Malaakini, 27, Scott Moorman, 27, Patrick Wassner, 26, and Peter Hanchett, 31. All 5 lived in or near Hana, Maui, and had been friends for years. Collectively, they shared more than 50 years of experience at sea. Ralph Malaakini was a professional fisherman, while the others worked in trades such as carpentry, plumbing, and construction. They were known locally as capable, strong swimmers who respected the ocean and understood its dangers. This was not a reckless group, nor were they unfamiliar with the waters they planned to fish. On February 11th, 1979, the men departed Hana Harbor around 10 a.m. Conditions were calm, the sky was clear, and nothing suggested danger. By early afternoon, however, an unusual wind swept down from the mountains, signaling a rapidly forming storm. Peter Hanchett's father, John Hanchett Sr., noticed the sudden shift and went to the shoreline with others, attempting to spot the boat and signal the men to return. They could not see the Sarah Joe. Within hours, gale-force winds and towering waves battered the coast. John Hanchett Sr. ventured into the storm himself, searching until conditions forced him back. The boat never returned. A massive search began almost immediately. Over 5 days, the U.S. Coast Guard, helicopters, aircraft, and volunteer boats searched approximately 73,000 square miles of ocean. The task was complicated by the fact that the Sarah Joe's pale blue hull blended with the sea. No debris, oil slick, or personal items were found. The search was eventually suspended, and the prevailing belief became that the boat had sunk during the storm, taking all 5 men with it. That assumption remained unchallenged until September 9th, 1988, when marine biologist John Naughton, who had participated in the original search, was conducting a wildlife survey on Taongi Atoll in the Marshall Islands. There, he discovered a small wrecked boat bearing partial Hawaiian registration numbers. Nearby, about 60 yards away, was a shallow grave marked with coral stones and a simple wooden cross with a human jawbone visible. The boat was confirmed to be the Sarah Joe, and the remains were identified through dental records as Scott Moorman. The grave also contained strange stacks of paper separated by foil, possibly resembling ceremonial burial offerings, though no definitive explanation was ever confirmed. Experts agree the boat could have drifted to Taongi in roughly 3 months. Yet a U.S. government survey of the island in 1985 reportedly found no trace of it, raising questions about where the boat had been for years and who buried Scott with such care. Despite private investigations, additional bone discoveries, and global online analysis of ocean currents and survival scenarios, no evidence has explained the fate of the other 4 men. The discovery brought partial closure and deeper pain. One family received remains to bury, 4 did not. Memorials were erected in Hana Bay and on Taongi Atoll, and the families continue to honor the men through annual remembrances. While time has passed, uncertainty remains permanent. What if one man survived long enough to reach land while the others were lost at sea? What if the truth exists somewhere the ocean and even the internet has yet to reveal? Story 5. On a bright summer afternoon during 4th of July weekend in 1966, 3 young women relaxed on a crowded Lake Michigan beach surrounded by thousands of people. They laughed, swam, and spoke with a stranger near the water. Then, in plain sight, they stepped onto a small boat and vanished. Nearly 6 decades later, despite investigations, media coverage, and countless online discussions, the internet still cannot explain what happened to them. Patricia Patty Blough was 19 years old and grew up in Westchester, Illinois, where she shared a difficult childhood with her younger sister, Janice. The two were inseparable, bonded by hardship and a deep love for horses. Patty was described as kind, independent, and passionate, eventually buying a racehorse of her own and finding joy at the stables. Her friends that summer were Renee Bruhl, also 19, recently married but reportedly unhappy, and Ann Miller, 21, who shared Patty's love of horses and riding. All 3 women were close, social, and known to regularly spend time together away from home. On the morning of July 2nd, 1966, Ann Miller drove Patty Blough and Renee Bruhl from the Chicago area to Indiana Dunes State Park. They arrived around 10 a.m., parked Ann's Buick, and set up their blanket near the shoreline. Witnesses later recalled seeing the women swimming, sunbathing, and talking with a well-tanned young man with dark, wavy hair aboard a small white boat with a blue interior. Around midday, the women left behind their purses, clothing, towels, money, and car keys, boarded the boat, and headed west along the shoreline. They were never seen again. Their belongings were discovered unattended that evening, but it was not until days later, after families reported them missing, that a full search began. Searches of the lake, shoreline, dunes, trails, and nearby woods revealed nothing, and no boating accidents were reported. Investigators considered the possibility of drowning, abduction, or voluntary disappearance, but none fully explained why the women left all personal items behind, or why no trace was ever found. Renee's unmailed letter expressing doubts about her marriage, rumors that one or more of the women may have been pregnant, and Patty's sister recalling that Patty appeared frightened and spoke of being in terrible trouble, added to the uncertainty. Over time, theories ranged from a boating accident with no recoverable evidence to an abduction that escalated into murder, to speculation about illegal activities connected to horses or even secret medical procedures aboard a boat, though none were ever substantiated. Investigators followed leads in Indiana and Chicago, examined suspects, reviewed film footage, and even explored psychic tips, yet every path ended without proof. Decades later, online forums, documentaries, and digital archives continue to re-examine the case. But even with modern technology, the internet still has no verified answers. For the families, the absence of closure has been lifelong. Patty's sister Janice says she knew almost immediately her sister would never return, a belief that has haunted her for decades. Despite pain and unanswered questions, families have continued to cooperate with investigators and share memories, holding on to the hope that the truth may one day surface. What if the women trusted someone who never intended to bring them back? What if the truth has been hidden in plain sight, beyond even the reach of the internet? Years turn into decades, but silence remains. No final moments confirmed. No explanations are strong enough to hold. These stories linger because they were never meant to end this way, and because someone, somewhere, still remembers who is missing. This is Vanished Stories, where the missing are never forgotten.